Picture this. It's the 1990s, and you're in Paris, right around the Bastille neighborhood. It's supposed to be this city of light and romance, but instead, there's this shadow hanging over everything, a real, deep-seated fear. Why? Because there was an elusive predator on the loose, and absolutely no one knew when or where he was going to strike next. This is the story of the hunt for the man they called the Beast of the Bastille. 7. Between 1991 and 1997, that number meant something truly awful. It meant 7 young women were attacked, tortured, and brutally murdered, often right in their own homes, in the very heart of Paris. The attacks just kept happening, creating this climate of absolute terror. And that's really the central mystery we're going to dig into. Who was this guy, this phantom attacker? And maybe the bigger question is, how on earth did he manage to slip through the fingers of one of the world's top police forces for so long, leaving this devastating trail of victims behind him?
So, to really get a handle on the investigation, first, you've got to understand the crimes themselves. This wasn't just a series of random chaotic events. No, this was a calculated reign of terror that had an entire community paralyzed with fear.
Just look at this timeline. The attacks stretched from 1991 all the way to 1997, and the gaps in between are just chilling. You see, years would go by and people would start to think, okay, maybe it's over. And then he'd strike again. Every single name you see here is a life that was just brutally cut short.
And here, you can see the official record. It is a lot to take in, I know. But this document, it lists those 7 murders we've been talking about, but it also shows a whole other disturbing list of crimes. This was the paper trail that the police eventually pieced together. But here's the thing. Those 7 murders, they weren't the beginning, not even close. They were a horrifying escalation. It turns out the man the police were hunting had a long, long history of violence that went back decades before that first murder in '91.
I mean, as far back as 1976, he was attacking women. You can see this pattern of just escalating brutality, attempted strangulations, stabbings, rapes. What's crazy is that several victims actually escaped and gave descriptions to the police, but somehow the attacker just remained a ghost in the system. And this, of course, brings us to the most frustrating, just infuriating part of the story, the investigation. With a predator this active for this long, why did it take 7 years and 7 murders to finally stop him? Well, the answers are a mix of outdated tech and just critical human error.
Okay, so one of the biggest roadblocks was technology. You have to remember, in the 1990s, France did not have a centralized national DNA database. So police had DNA from several crime scenes, but they had no way to run it against a list of known offenders. It was like having a key, but having absolutely no idea which lock it might fit.
But you can't just blame the technology. There were so many missed opportunities. Eyewitness descriptions that were actually pretty good, they were dismissed. In one case, the neighbors of a murder victim weren't interviewed for almost 2 years. And unbelievably, the man they were looking for had already been in their custody, questioned for other crimes, but no one connected the dots.
The police inaction got so bad, so frustrating, that Anne Gauthier, the mother of Helene Frinking, one of the victims, decided she had to do something. She started her own co-investigation, constantly pushing the police, following up on leads herself. I mean, can you imagine? It's just a heartbreaking testament to how badly the official process was failing.
So, after all these years of dead ends and missed chances, how did they finally get him? Well, it was a combination of new leadership, forensic science, and just plain stubborn determination that finally cracked this case wide open.
The first real step forward came from the lab. Forensic analysis was finally able to definitively link the DNA found at 3 of the murder scenes: Agnes Nijkamp, Helen Frinking, and Estelle Mag. Now the police knew for sure they were hunting a single serial killer.
But they still didn't have a name. So a judge on the case made a pretty controversial call. She was so fed up with the lack of progress that she ordered this massive manual search of DNA records, pulling from all sorts of files, something that just wasn't done. It was a total long shot, but you know what? It worked. They found a match, a man named Guy George. And that's when investigators must have gotten a real shock. They realized it was the same guy they'd questioned and let go years earlier. And this is who they'd been hunting. Not some criminal mastermind, not some genius. He was a man that experts would later call a narcissistic psychopath. He had been hiding right there in plain sight, and his violent past was just buried in a bunch of disconnected files.
So,
With a name and a face, the hunt for the beast of the Bastille was finally entering its last dramatic chapter.
The end came on March 26, 1998. Guy Georges was arrested, almost by chance actually. The 7-year reign of terror was over. Faced with the mountain of DNA evidence, he confessed. And 3 years later, in April 2001, he finally faced justice.
He was sentenced to life in prison. That's the maximum penalty you can get under French law. For the families of his victims, it was the end of a long, agonizing fight.
And during his trial, Guy Georges said these final, chilling words. He said, "I will never leave prison. You can live in peace. Whatever happens, I won't do it again. Even if you don't accept it, I ask for forgiveness." Just cold comfort after so much loss.
So when you look back, the story of Guy Georges is about so much more than just a manhunt. It's a snapshot in time. It's a really stark reminder of how disconnected files and a lack of technology allowed a monster to hide in plain sight. It really makes you wonder, right? Without the persistence of a victim's mother, without a judge willing to bend the rules, would he have ever been caught? It just shows you how much the evolution of justice depends not just on science, but on the simple human refusal to give up.